took us to get ready to do just kind of an update on the officer-involved shooting. You know, we were just here a 2 weeks ago, and I wish we were here talking about something else. And the things that I closed out that last interview that we had, you know, the things that no one knows what we're going to be responding to and how things are going to change in the course of a situation that calls that officers go to. So that's kind of where we'll pick up today. So what I just kind of setting some parameters. This still is an open investigation. My intent today is just to kind of give an overview of things that occurred Friday that took place at the trailer park. I'm not going to get into great detail and specifics in statements because it is an ongoing investigation, out of respect for all those involved and our Commonwealth attorney that will also review the case and make the ultimate determination. Okay, is that fair? But I will try to give you, I'll take a few questions at the end, and we'll try to give you the best overview look that I can of what occurred on this past Friday. So we'll start with a call was generated for service at about 12:19 on Friday afternoon, January the 5th of 2024. And the address we were at is number 1 Davis Park Drive. And the reason that officers were there were two things were going on. It was a follow-up on a welfare check and also to serve an arrest warrant. The welfare check, the individual, Mr. David Noteboom, he's a 43-year-old white male. We were asked to do a welfare check by his father and also by his ex-girlfriend. So that was the reason that we were there. As we responded, that we saw an individual, a female, enter and leave the residence or the dwelling, the trailer there. And now the trailer is not like a mobile home fixed. It is a trailer that could be hooked up to a vehicle and driven and set down. I think they call it a fifth wheel, but don't quote me on that. I'm not exactly sure on that terminology, but it's not a fixed mobile home. So small in stature, and the front door is kind of small for entering and leaving. So as officers are there on a welfare check, again serving an arrest warrant that had just been obtained, I believe, in the last 24 hours out of Chesapeake. Let me make sure I got that right. Yes, Chesapeake warrant for failure to appear. That was the warrant that was going to be attempted to be served. So while they were there, as I said, there was a female that went into the trailer and it had not come out. As officers responded, and because there had been some planning going on, we had been to this location earlier in the week, sort of the same thing on a welfare check. But because of some of the information about suicidal tendencies, the possession of a firearm, we wanted to use some precaution. I just didn't want to just out of the blue send. The more we know, the better. The more we know, the better. So in situations where we have a little bit more information, we may change our response a little bit for safety of overall everyone involved. So instead of just a radio call to officers that were working, we utilized officers who are also members of the SWAT team because of their training and experience, the situations they respond to. So again, as we called officers to the scene, we had a phone number for this particular, his ex-girlfriend, and we started having those conversations, dialing her number and asking her to come outside. This goes on for about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes, and there's no response to these phone calls. There was no entry made before or during those calls, and there was no entry made immediately following those calls. But for about an hour and 15 minutes, there's calls made to her cell phone in attempts to have her talk to us, maybe tell us what's going on inside, or to ask her to step out and remove herself from the trailer. As we got no response there, we went to the PA system on the vehicle that we used. There was a recording by an officer giving an audio recording, calling both individuals out by name, David and his ex-girlfriend, to please come out. They referred to them both by name, and that went on for about 20 to 25 minutes asking them to step out of the trailer. There's no response. There was no entry made while the PA system was going, the directions were being given, and there was no entry into the trailer once we ceased. While that was going on, towards the end of that, an individual, we can't tell who, opened the trailer door. It became ajar. No one stepped out, but the door did come somewhat open, and then there was no response. So as time goes on, they go back to doing PA announcements, and officers that were outside began to hear screaming and yelling, sounds of what's described as distress or help. At that point is when officers made the decision, believing that someone was in harm's way, believing that there was someone in there that was unable to leave or not exactly sure what we can see. Now let me stop there just for a minute. I wish that we had a crystal ball and could tell what was going on in people's minds. I wish that we had a technology could allow us to see through these walls and what the situation was. But we don't have that. So what we did have is an hour to an hour and 15 minutes of no one responding to a telephone call, several calls I should say, no one responding to commands coming over a PA system or a loudspeaker system to exit, calling individuals by name. And then we start to hear yelling and screaming, sounds of distress or help. At that point, officers did enter the trailer. Upon entry, they saw a struggle between David and his ex-girlfriend. There was a firearm present. As the struggle, you hear commands from the officers, and I know we'll get some questions about where their body-worn cameras on. The answer is yes. So it's also visually and audio recorded. There are commands given by the officer as they enter, they announce themselves. You continue to hear some screaming and yelling. You see the struggle going back and forth. There is a firearm. There becomes separation. The firearm was up towards the head area, the mouth area of David. There's some separation. The female goes to the ground or falls down, and I can't tell you if she was pushed down, if she's struggling and slips, if he pulls away, but there was tugging back and forth. So during that struggle, she goes down to the ground, and there is a firearm that is moved in the direction towards the officers, and there are shots that are fired by the Newport News Police Department. David was struck. They immediately, and you hear immediately officers say, get the hostage out, get the hostage out. I think that goes to talk a little bit about what they felt was going on at that time. But to get the hostage out, his ex-girlfriend is removed, and officers immediately went over to render aid. They removed some clothing looking for injuries. The firearm was still in his hand. It was removed, and he was then later transported to a local hospital where unfortunately he succumbed to his injuries. Now, I wish I could tell you what was going on in individuals' minds. I wish I could tell you why individuals didn't come outside. I don't know if there was not having that crystal ball, right? I don't know if someone wasn't allowed to come out. I don't know if there was how long that struggle had been going on. I don't know if there was who opened the door, if someone stopped someone from walking out that door, if someone started to, then changed their mind. We just don't know. What we do know is that there was no response to a phone call for over an hour and 15 minutes. There was no response to a PA system that went on calling individuals out by name for 20 to 25 minutes. We do know that we heard screaming and yelling, and at that point, officers believing that someone was in distress, or could be, I explained to you that they used the word hostage when they removed her out, that someone was in danger. When they went in, they did see a struggle. The officers moved towards that, giving commands. This happened very quickly. This isn't like in slow motion. This happens very, very quickly in a matter of seconds. The female, the ex-girlfriend, goes down. The firearm is up towards the mouth and head area of David, and then it is moved in the direction of the officers, and then the officer fires. One officer fired. Again, immediately she was removed. They talked about get the hostage out, get her out, and immediately went to life-saving, their best to render aid to David. And again, he was transported to a local hospital where he later succumbed to his injuries. Now, from that point, the scene was processed, interviews taking place. We'll investigate this just like we would any shooting in our city. Internal Affairs was also notified and responded to the scene. They will do their administrative investigation following the shooting investigation. So there's a lot of interviews that have been conducted already. There's still several interviews and follow-up interviews that will happen. Detectives will work hand in hand with our Commonwealth Attorney. The department is certainly capable, and the experience and forensics and technology we have is to investigate these matters, and then the case will eventually be turned over completely to the Commonwealth Attorney for there to make their recommendation. So I'll take a few questions. Just very, very mindful, again, that we are still in an ongoing investigation, and I don't want to do anything that hinders that, but I do think it's important to be as open and transparent as we can. Now, I do understand that there was an interview or some interviews done by individuals. So if we have some questions about that, I'll be glad to answer, but I'm not trying to put any doubt in what individuals are saying. Just some things don't match up to the evidence that we have, and then some things in those interviews or interview that took place contradict some things that were said and that is on video. And I understand that. When you have emotions and fear and feelings, I completely get that. So I'll take a few questions. I'll have a couple closing things, and then we'll move on.
Chief, so the public's going to see, as you mentioned, this comes off the heels of another incident involving an officer. In that case, the public's seeing these two cases. In one case, you have shots fired at officers before they were fired. And in this case, from my understanding and from what's been released, there were no shots fired at officers inside. So can you...
It's a great question.
Why was obviously similarities in these two cases, but why are these outcomes different, and what do you think the public should understand about it?
So I think that is a great and a very fair question. A couple of things we didn't talk about in similarities is we both had individuals that were going through some mental crisis, and both of these individuals are armed with a firearm. There's no shooting, or there's no police-involved shooting that is, everything follows. It's not exactly the same. Individual may look at what's in the background, how close I am, how close is, the first shooting that you're talking about, it was one individual who approached in an aggressive manner a group of officers. In this situation, there were two individuals. What the officers believed as a hostage, a female that is struggling, and she's in the line of fire. When we talk about training, trying to do the best we can to make sure that she's out of the way. So I don't think our society would ask anyone that you have to wait until someone shoots you or shoots at you. I think the law is pretty clear about that. But when you feel that your life is in danger or someone else's life is in danger, you have to make that decision. And I would submit to you that it's not made as I sit in an office and can hit pause and put it in slow motion and frame by frame by frame. I can even take a break and come back and look at it again. This is a situation that happens very, very rapidly, and it's in a matter of seconds. So the officers that were forced into that situation, believing that someone was in danger, hearing that scream and yelling, that someone's a hostage, visually seeing a struggle with a firearm, making sure the best they could that individual is out of the line of fire. God forbid that something would happen. And then as that firearm comes in that direction, officers protecting themselves, the other officers in the room, knowing what is the next step. I think those are all, I think you have to look at all of that in what we, in law enforcement and legality terms, right, the totality of everything that we have going on. I think those two circumstances are different in different situations, the difference being that we had an individual injected into this situation at the trailer park that we didn't have before.
Can you provide clarity also on so the warrant was for a missing court date, but so when we checked with Chesapeake, they said that the warrant was habeas warrant for grand larceny. So was the warrant at play in the original barricade situation on Thursday, or was that warrant obtained obtain on Friday just for the failure to appear before
No,
the
it's,
court?
it's also a good question. No, the warrant had been obtained, I believe, in the last 24 hours. It was not in play on Thursday. We did not, that warrant wasn't in existence on Thursday. Apparently, there was a court case that was meant to happen or scheduled to happen, and so that was not in the same. And the other big difference between Thursday and Friday is that there was not another individual inside that trailer on Thursday. On Friday, that changes things. On Thursday, there is David and a call of suicidal tendencies that he made himself with a firearm, and officers responded, and you saw the press release there that officers responded. He had a firearm and went into the trailer, and then we come back to trying to negotiate and have conversations. And again, sort of the same scenario that we didn't get any feedback whatsoever. So there's some decisions to be made. And if we don't have to force an issue, right, if we don't have to take some motion, some action, some behavior to force an issue on Thursday and no one else is in danger, time is on our side. Sometimes we can back away, de-escalate, put some time and distance between things, let someone calm down. If any type of substance or alcohol, and I'm talking in large scale terms, that we can back away and let some of that calm down. It's very, very difficult when we're not having conversations, whether it's verbally through a window or through a phone or some type of audio device. It's very, very difficult. The difference between Thursday and Friday is that there was an individual inside and officers here screaming and yelling. We knew that there was a firearm in play. That is a different scenario than what we were presented with on Thursday. I hope that answered your question.
How many rounds did police fire at David?
So I don't want to get too specific. I can tell you he was hit 2 or 3 times. The autopsy was, I believe it was yesterday. So we'll get that report, but I believe 2 or 3 times.
Talking about, it sounded like in the moment they thought this might have been some kind of a hostage situation, referring to the woman as a hostage at one point. During this press conference, you mentioned wishing for there being a crystal ball to know what was going on in their minds.
Yes.
Were things really not what they seemed at first? I know you can't reveal
Sure.
details of the open investigation, but are you able to say whether or not what was really going on inside that trailer was not what it seemed at first to officers?
So I can tell you this. The crystal ball, you're exactly right. Not knowing what's in someone's mind, what someone's thought process is. We know Thursday that there was a call about suicidal tendencies. They wanted to end his life and had a firearm. And we know from talking with his father, and no disrespect whatsoever, and his ex-girlfriend on Friday, when they asked us to do another welfare check, that there were similar concerns, that he's going to hurt himself, that may take his life, that he has a firearm. So I can't tell you what's going on in someone's mind. I can tell you that the officers believed, as all of us believe that there was an individual inside. We knew that. That's fact. We know that someone didn't come out after an hour and 15 minutes of phone calls. We know that an individual didn't come out after 20 to 25 minutes of hearing their name on a PA system, asking them to please come outside. I think that I saw some of the news outlets that even individuals who live in that neighborhood said that they heard those directions coming forward. We know that someone opened the door but didn't come out. That's fact, that the door was then ajar. And we know that someone was screaming, yelling, and that officers entered. We know that officers saw a struggle, and we know that the officers saw David with a firearm. Now, what that struggle was about, I can't tell you. I know that part of that, and I don't want to get into those interviews, but from the interview I saw on the news by the ex-girlfriend, his ex-girlfriend, maybe that struggle was about, I'm trying to get that firearm away from him. We don't know that. No one knows that, except her and maybe David. Why, when asked, should I go there? And the response from the police department is absolutely not. Do not go to that location. We were some plans to try to meet up with her and get some more information, and maybe even a key to the door. But it was given very specific directions. Do not go there. We don't know what's going on there. I think wholeheartedly from A to Z that we believed, and you even hear in the audio video, you even hear the officers as they enter after the shooting occurs get the hostage out. I think that mindset, everyone believed that there was someone in danger, and that accompanied by the screaming and yelling that they had heard.
Were there other mental health may not have been necessarily armed police officers, but the Marcus alert system is becoming more like
Sure.
alternatives from a crisis response standpoint. Can you explain that kind of response that was there on scene?
Sure. So I can tell you that we reached out to the CSB board and the 988, which you refer to as the Marcus alert, before we ever went to that location. We have to remember that those are individuals that certainly have much more training, when we're dealing with those crisis individuals, but it is also very concerning on their part, and I completely understand that the police are there, you're dealing with an individual who's armed in a hostage-type situation. We had conversation with them, but they were very open about that would not be the place for us to be at that point. And I think we talked about that in the last situation we had. We don't want to ever inject someone into harm's way, but we're always, in law enforcement, we had this conversation yesterday, always looking at how do we better incorporate, whether it's the police department or outside entities or individuals that are professional at dealing with people who are going through a mental crisis. A couple of those things, when you interject illegal substances or alcohol, those things become more complicated. And we never want to put civilians in harm's way if we can help it. And I think that kind of plays into what was going on inside the trailer when the officers entered.
I trust you've seen the body cam footage.
Yes, sir.
And you mentioned the gun being, brought down into the direction of officers. Was the barrel of the gun ever at any point pointed at officers?
So that's what I would refer to as that the firearm is up and then coming down in a motion that the firearm was pointed at the direction of the officers.
Do you know if that body cam footage will be released ahead of the end of the investigation at any point to clear up?
So yep, that's a fair question. We get that a lot. I will tell you, from my standpoint and the respect I have for the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, I would not do anything to jeopardize their case. They will want to see that, and I will tell you that I did not look at every officer's body-worn footage. I think I looked at 2 at length, again, with the ability to stop and pause, where the officers that went inside didn't have that option. They had a matter of seconds, right, to determine who's in danger, are the other officers in danger, is she safe, and is this individual posing a threat to me? And that is a lot to ask in a small area, and I mean split second. So I will not release that until I confer with the Commonwealth Attorney. There's still a case to be investigated and interviewed. We'll still also look at that on the back end, on the administrative side of the house, but first it will be Chief Creswell, Captain Petrosky's side of the house will do the shooting investigation along with forensics, the state lab, and certainly the Commonwealth Attorney that will be turned over to. And then after that, then we'll look at, sir, one of the questions you had about is what else can we do? What else can we add? How do we get better as law enforcement, right, in the big picture of dealing with individuals who suffer issues with mental illness, who are suicidal? And I will, 2 other things I want to say that night, and maybe it was wrong of me, but that night I called David's father. Now, we didn't have a long conversation, but I wanted him to know that I was aware of the situation, that I was calling to check on him, and I'm not even sure what I wanted him to say, but I wanted him to know that he mattered to me. This situation is nothing that anybody wanted to go to. It's nothing that we went there and rushed in through a door. It was nothing of that whatsoever. I think you can tell by the lag time and phone calls and being there, and then the PA system, and even one other door opening, that no one entered that trailer, that structure, that dwelling, until there was an individual, a female inside, who screamed out. Now, was she screaming out, hey, I need help? Was she screaming out, I don't do that? Was she screaming out, I'm in danger? I would love to have a bird's eye view and see exactly what that situation, but even then I can't tell what's in her mind. And that is a lot to ask people. What I have is, can we imagine what we would be talking about if she would have been hurt and officers would have heard that screaming and yelling and not walked through that door? In a matter of seconds, the decisions that they have to make. What conversation will we have if his father and his ex-girlfriend ask us to go check on him and we just, we'll do it at another time? We responded to a situation that nobody wants to, but in our profession, we're required to. And I could not be more proud of the officers and the way that they handled that situation. We put them in harm's way, and then they made the actions and the responses that they felt like they had to make.
Chief, how many officers went into the trailer?
If I'm counting in my head, I believe it was 5. It could have been 6, but at least 5. And it's Pete, it's small, so you couldn't get much more in than that. And it's very narrow, so it was single file. It wasn't 2 by 2 or anything. It was single file.
Were they all SWAT team?
They're all, we don't have a permanent SWAT team. That's all they do. They're all officers, but they are members of the SWAT team. And we wanted to use individuals that have a little bit more training, good communication skills, talking together. And, as they're outside, in some of the footage, you can hear them talking about, hey, she's screaming. We hear her screaming. And I think that she, if I'm not mistaken, I think with one of the outlets she did an interview with, that she talked about that she was screaming and yelling, and officers heard that.
So they were in their SWAT team gear. He was shot with a rifle, I assume.
He was. What I'm going to put here is he was shot with his patrol rifle that's issued to the officers. Yes.
Okay. And on Thursday night, when the SWAT team, when the tactical situation ended, what was the reason that it ended? Like, it was going on, and then how did?
Right. So we're not getting any. We don't have the arrest warrant. We obtained an emergency custody order, but there's a time frame on those that they expire, and then you have to go get it renewed. We didn't have any new information. We had not had any interaction with him. There was no response through attempts at PA system. We don't know if he is. We didn't hear any gunshots inside, so we don't know that if he is passed out, if he is just refusing to have a conversation. And the fine line we walk, again, with an individual who had called himself that is suicidal, that has a firearm, we don't know that any action we do may provoke him. So sometimes it's best, there's no rush, and I think we tried to show that on Friday as well, that officers did not just walk in there right away. There was a lot of time frame that went on, from the phone calls to the PA system to the door opening, and it wasn't until someone screamed that we entered that trailer. On Thursday, we didn't have those things, and there's no one else inside, to our knowledge, that's in danger. So some of those things, sometimes it's best to back away, not push that. We learned that with some of our mental illness training, that, hey, we have time and distance, de-escalate a little bit, if you will, and then spot check, keep an eye on and see if he comes outside. And it was actually one of the assistant chiefs, Chief Hires, that saw a vehicle there on Friday that changed our time frame. And when we ran that license plate and determined that it was the ex-girlfriend, after we had asked her, please don't go there, that changed everything for us. And that's after she had asked for the welfare check and his dad, that changed everything. So I hope that answers your question. We're not under the same concerns of another person being injured, her injecting herself there. And I get it. She has feelings for him. I totally get it. I think I get it. But injecting herself there changed the circumstances we have from Thursday to Friday.
So Thursday there was an emergency custody order which expired, and then Friday.
Which would have expired, yes.
And then Friday did not have one, but you had a warrant, a capious warrant for the arrest.
You had an arrest warrant, right.
Plus it was considered a follow-up.
Yep, so there were two things going on there. So not just the follow-up from Thursday, that we had had conversations with his dad and his girlfriend about doing a welfare check on him again. And then with the arrest warrant, those two things in, we believe that it was best to have use some of our more highly trained officers to handle that situation.
How did you know about the warrant? Was that just an NCIC check?
So anytime that we're going to certain addresses, things will pop up on the computer screen from dispatchers. Maybe a warrant on file, calling in, verifying that, checking it, those type things. That's pretty standard.
It just happened to come up like.
Yeah, it wasn't. We didn't take out that warrant, right? It was from another jurisdiction. But it's when we're responding to a situation or a scene, when we're talking through, we had planned that out. And hey, let's just check and make sure there's no warrants on file, just like we would any other time. And there were warrants. There was a warrant on file. And that's a great question, because it goes into that it wasn't, hey, let's just show up on Friday and go out here. There was a lot of conversation with his father and his girlfriend, and even phone and text messages. We had tried on Thursday. We had tried to get a hold of his ex-girlfriend and were unable to do that. So she called Friday, I guess seeing the calls that she had missed, and that's when they had the conversation. And she talked about some concern for him, suicidal, and I don't want him to hurt himself. Should I go there? And the instructions from the department were absolutely not. Please let us handle that. Maybe we can get together and get a key, and I think that was in the process of doing that. But the car, when we saw another car in front of his vehicle, and we ran that license plate, we were able to determine that was his ex-girlfriend, and that changed things. Then we had to make some moves concerning that someone may be in harm's way.
And that arrest warrant, it was for failure to appear in court, am I right?
Yes, ma'am. From I want to make sure I get it right. It was a failure to appear, a grand larceny warrant out of Chesapeake. Yes, ma'am.
So aside from the PA, I mean, I assume you guys were also banging on the door as well, right?
Nope. Again, we don't want to put officers in harm's way. We're not going to go up to a door where we know someone has a firearm. There's some distance and barricades. Some of the vehicles we use where officers and are positioned. I can tell you they were certainly close enough to hear an individual screaming out, yelling inside the trailer. But no, I would not put officers right. I mean, the trailer door thin. We would not put officers up there in harm's way. It's the same thing when we talk about medical or mental counselors. We're not going to put them in harm's way. So the closer you get, the more dangerous you are, or in danger you could be. So we try to have someone behind barricade, behind vehicles, or off to the side.
Okay. And can you talk about the drone and the robot?
No, I don't want to get into tactics at all. I can tell you that anything that we have that aids us in individual safety, officer safety, community safety goes a long way, but I don't want to really get into technology and tactics that were there out of respect for the case questions, interviews that still need to take place.
The court documents showed that syringes and a burnt spoon were found. Are you able to say if drugs were involved in this situation, or was that just kind of happenstance?
So I think there was some information from individuals that there may be some drug use, but I don't want to, out of respect, I'm not going to go down and talk about individuals' history. But I can tell you in those types of situations, when we're talking about mental health, suicidal, that is always one of the things that we're talking about is drug paraphernalia or drug use, alcohol use, all those things that compounded with someone who's having some type of mental can cause some difficulty. So out of respect, I'm going to go ahead and end it here. I appreciate you guys taking the time to come out. I will tell you that these are one of the more serious calls that officers respond to. No one wanted this to end this way. I was glad that we were able to get his girlfriend out and that she's safe. I understand, I completely, totally understand feelings for an individual. It just, as we were presented with some different circumstances, we had to do some different things on Friday, but it was certainly not rushed. There was a long time that elapsed and things that we tried to do to get individuals to come out, as we would in situations you guys see us deal with all the time. So I appreciate it. Thank you, but I'm going to go ahead and stop it here, and we will go from here. Okay?
All right.
Thank you.